We paid about 120 for this, 125 maybe. We put in probably 60,000 to engineers and attorneys to get all the zoning stuff. But once we got through the zoning and we had final approval that we could start digging here, the value of the property, we had it appraised, went from that roughly 125 and we put, 45-ish into it. So say we're into it for 170, the value came back at 1.1 million.
Welcome back to another episode of Wealth Wednesday. I'm your host, Nate Crannell, joined again today by the CEO of Grand Vision Capital, Mike Neubauer. Just like last time, Mike is on location. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Not too bad. Tell me a little bit about where you are today. You got the sunshine, I see.
Yeah, first day of sunshine. The rain is killing us. So we are out here at a storage development site that we have. It's about 8 acres. We're doing about 100,000 square feet of storage development. So we're out here today because we have a meeting tomorrow for what's called final plot. So we're basically kind of getting everything tidied up and ready for an inspection to hopefully get our final plot approval tomorrow. So that's what we are out here doing today. The machinery is out here working a little bit, but it's super sloppy and muddy. So I brought my son. I don't know if you can see him back there, but we're doing a lot of stuff by hand just to get it caught up and ready for tomorrow's meeting.
Yeah. So is that final plot, is that kind of like the, I don't want to say the finishing touches because it's not done, but more like what you need before phase 2, phase 3 moves on?
Yeah, so final plot basically means you got to subdivide this land, and even though it's technically a one-lot subdivision, but basically final plot means that the groundwork and the dirt work is basically approved for us moving forward and then starting to build upwards. So I don't know if you can see, but a ton of piles and dirt work and stuff. This was just a field before. So basically final plot means that all this stuff is done and ready to go, and then the final plot, they can go and actually chart this and give it a legal description and say, hey, this is a new subdivision in this town, and record all of that.
For sure. Yeah, I want to use today as to talk about new development. So in a previous episode you and I did, you were at an existing storage facility that you had purchased, and that was more of a rehab. So you didn't have to deal with all the dirt and the building and everything like that. All of that was existing. And you guys were essentially rehabbing and moving forward. And so I want to use today as an opportunity to kind of talk through new development. That can be done in any real estate, right? Not just storage. Storage is just our example today, but you can have existing that you rehab in apartments, houses, commercial properties, things like that, or you can have new development, where you're starting from the ground up and it's your own canvas. And so I have a lot of questions for you today about new development, just because I know our listeners, that when they're thinking about investing and what's the best places for them, if real estate is where they land, kind of that next step past deciding that real estate is their investment choice, they then have to decide, do we do existing or do we do new development? And there's a lot of different caveats to each one. So I want to dive in if you're ready for it.
Yeah, man, shoot away.
Talk to me about the dirt thing. That's where you're at today. This is, final plot before tomorrow's meeting. As you are coming up on an 8-acre piece of property that was just a field, what sparks or what generates the ideas to decide, okay, I want to put some real estate here, and what's my next step?
So next step is kind of zoning. So the dirt first for this parcel, for example, was technically in the county, but it was right on the edge. So if I could turn this around, you can see these homes back here. Do you see those townhouses there?
Yep.
So it was right on the edge of the town limits, but it was technically in the county still. So it's a piece of property, is zoned agriculture, but it's kind of not really its best use anymore because it's just this tiny little chunk in the middle of town. So that's kind of the first thing, is piece of land that's not being used for its best use anymore, and it could be used for something that's going to produce more money. So that's the first thing we identified. And then basically that 8 acres is just, is that big enough, and what would be good here for the market? Would it be retail? Would it be office? Would it be housing? So that's kind of the first identification. And we were really looking to get into storage and just start testing some of our processes in storage. So we made an offer on this property and put it under contract, and then went through the whole thing. So we annexed it into the town. We got a zoning change. We had to get a variance in order to do storage. And, now we're standing here after the machines came through and, turned the field into a working site. We got water, sewer in the ground. So it's all been quite a learning curve. But yeah, it's basically where it starts is identifying land and saying, okay, is this the best use of land? And if not, is there something that would be better use? And then basically, will I profit for turning this land into not good use into its best use? And how much will I profit for doing that? And if it's worth it, then you go ahead and do it.
Awesome. Tell me about the timeline from going from buying the land, zoning, variances to now today, final plot. Are you on a pretty standard timeline, or have you run into any obstacles along the way?
Oh my God, man. So many obstacles. So this is the first development that we've ever done. And because of that, there's just a lot of obstacles that you don't know. I mean, we had these same type of obstacles when we started flipping houses years ago, and you kind of go through them and learn. So the obstacles have been brutal. But also every obstacle, you just learn an absolute ton. So if everything went smoothly, I probably would not have learned that much because it just would have all been, there would have been no learning opportunities. It would have just worked how it was supposed to. But we closed on this property the day before May 1st. So yeah, April 30. We bought this in July of 21. So roughly 3 years to get where we're at today. That's definitely an extended timeline. There is some, because we were outside city limits, there was first annexing, so that's a process that is added on to just the normal development, and then the rezoning. So those processes are just kind of a time thing. They just take time. You have to do public meetings. You have to give a certain number of days before the public meeting is posted, before the public meeting can happen, and then you're on the town schedule. So those were delays anyway. And then once we got approval to start moving some dirt, then the delays come from contractors. So you're trying to line up different contractors and coordinate who's coming when and trying to do one after another. But then it rains and they get backed up and then they have another job. So then it became all contractors just trying to coordinate, and then weather, and you're moving dirt. The weather plays a huge role. And then once we got this stuff in the ground and moving, then you got to coordinate all of the erosion control, because you have that all set up initially when it's a fresh field and everything's perfect. But then when they start moving dirt and piling things and making a mess, then you got to go through, and that's been the latest delay. That delayed us a couple months, is redoing that. So like you can see this big, where Grayson is right now, this big riprap culvert. That was just a pipe that stuck out of the ground, technically not even on our property, but because we take all that discharge, we're responsible for making something work. So we had to go in, and that's what we're here doing today, is kind of creating a whole new culvert system to take the water from another property to pass it through our property.
Yeah. So not a quick turnaround is what I'm hearing you say.
Not a quick turnaround at all. I think it could be a little bit quicker. There's definitely some delays that I would not have in the future just from learning, but definitely a slow go, and no money coming in for a long time while you're doing all this work. All money going out.
Yeah, that was really the genesis of my question. Was more for the listeners who are thinking about, oh man, I want to start a new development. Instead of buying something from the 70s and rehabbing it and doing what you can with the framework that you're given, it could be exciting for some investors to say, I'm going to start from scratch and build something brand new and really cool. The one thing you got to think about is returns. Like if you're wanting to see returns in 12 months, 18 months, building a new development is probably not where you want to go. And to your point, exactly. I mean, you're going to run into a lot more hiccups, I would say, or at least some obstacles and delays with a new development than you would in existing. Is that fair?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely going to be delayed quite a bit. You just kind of outweigh, you look at the time value of money. So it's basically, will these delays in money coming back into our pocket, is that delay worth how much more money you will make? And if it is, then you go ahead and do it. Because, obviously the harder it is, the better the return should be. If you're putting in more effort and more risk, you got to do it only if there's better return. So you just kind of weigh that teeter-totter of, is the reward worth the risk and the time?
Yep. Did you ever, when you were doing single family homes or even multifamily, apartments, did you ever do new development in that space? So you knew a little bit about zoning and variances and some of the things that you talked about, or is this brand new for you?
This was number one, baby.
Nice.
So this is the very first time. Yeah, we learned it all. And I feel like this is an 8-acre parcel, so it's bigger than just a residential lot. So there's definitely more to learn. We had to put in public infrastructure, public sewer, public water. We had to do the annexing, the zoning. So it was definitely a lot, but it wasn't like a whole subdivision. So it wasn't terribly overwhelming. And then we paid $125,000 for the property. So it wasn't a huge outlay. So I felt like it was a safe one. It was big enough to really push me out of my comfort zone and really know that I was stepping into uncharted territory for myself and I was going to learn a lot. But it wasn't so small that it was going to be easy, and the mistakes wouldn't be made. So I feel like it was a good first step for me.
Yeah. So let's call this phase one from July of 2021 till tomorrow's meeting, that final plot. What is phase two? What's May 2nd and beyond? What's next for you?
So that'll be laying in gravel here on all the pads, concrete work going in, and then electric coming in and starting to put underground electric, underground plumbing to the buildings. And then basically once that stuff is all in, then the crew comes in and they build up. So it's all metal buildings. So they'll build up on those concrete pads and all of a sudden you'll have a working storage facility. And then after that would be asphalt coming in. So everything will be rock until then. And then once all that is done, then the asphalt company will come in and do the parking lot and all the driveways and all of that.
Yeah, that was my next question is there, do you lay concrete first, metal building on top, or is it, you got to really secure with footings and stuff like that for the metal buildings? And then essentially the asphalt goes around.
A number of ways, and depending where you, what community and what areas you're going to be. We're up in the northern area, so we have, frost lines and different things, but the engineer draws all that. So what we're doing is a concrete slab and then buildings on top of that. Some people do like a post frame where they'd put the post in the ground and anchored, and then they'd build the building and then pour the concrete basically inside of the building footprint. So there's a number of ways to do these different buildings, but depending on the area and then the engineer you use and then the materials and kind of what you have at hand for contractors is basically how it works out. But I think this is probably the most common way now is to build the slab first and then build on top of that.
Gotcha. Yeah, and this may be a weird question just because you're mentioning the engineer and their designs, but I think I saw railroad tracks behind you at one point. How does that affect, if a train's, steaming by, the vibration from that alone can be felt when you're sitting in a car next to it. How does that affect your building? Is there a certain offset from the tracks that you had to start building so that you didn't disrupt any of the asphalt or building structure?
No, actually, it's not as bad as you would think. You definitely feel the rumble, but yeah, it doesn't actually move any of the rock. Like this big pile of stuff that we have back here. None of the train's gone by a few times. None of that rock moves at all. So basically you just got to stay off of lot lines. That's more of a zoning requirement unrelated to the railroads, but just the standard setbacks off of the lot lines is more than enough. There's nothing that the train disturbs. And actually, I think that's kind of why we got this piece of land at a good price, is because you're limited. Who wants to have an office building with a train blowing a horn going by? Who wants to have a house backed right up to the train tracks? So it's kind of limited in what you could do on only 8 acres. You can't do a whole subdivision. It's right next to the train tracks. So very limited, but storage kind of fit perfect because people don't really care about being by the train tracks. We're making a beautiful storage facility that kind of fits in with the neighborhood. So it's not going to be a big gaudy building. So it's kind of a perfect fit for this lot of what to put here.
Yeah, and I bet the people in those condos there to the east are probably going to appreciate having another building in between them and the tracks. It could absorb some of that sound.
Yeah, maybe. Nobody likes anything going in. They think they like an open field, but yeah, there's no doubt going to be some benefits from it to kind of break up some of that noise when that train rips through. Yeah.
You mentioned getting a good deal on that land. Maybe it is because of the tracks, but let's talk about the financing side of things. As you buy the 8 acres, you mentioned $125,000 is a pretty good deal. Talk about the financing side of things. What goes into that? And I guess my mind goes to like the proof of concept, right? For a bank to say, "Hey, have you ever built a storage facility before?" And you're like, "Nope, this is our first one." Like we're going to learn a bunch. What do those conversations look like? What can other investors, if they watch this and say, "Okay, Mike did it, and it seems like something I could go out and do. This should be pretty easy. I'm going to run to the bank quick and get a loan." Talk me through that.
Yeah, so the bank is always looking to limit risk. So they limit risk by you either have a lot of assets that they can attach to a loan. That way, if you make a mistake, they can get your assets, or you have a ton of experience, which reduces their risk. So that's kind of the two things they're looking at. We use, for the most part, the same bank and they know our, financial background, and we've done a lot of different work with them. So in general, we've paid back loans to them. So they have a relatively safe risk with us. And then as far as this development goes, we bought the land cash actually, just to get through the zoning process, because I think it would have been tough to tell the bank, hey, we want to buy this land for this price, and then we have to get it annexed in, then we need a zoning change, then we need a variance. There's just too much risk that starts to build up because, worst case scenario, the bank then has to own this 8-acre land. And if it's an 8-acre piece of land that's not its best use and they're stuck owning it, they don't want that asset. So we bought it cash, got it through to all those phases, and then when it was time to actually build, that's when we got the bank loan. And then we just did a development loan. So our development will cost roughly $4 million or so, and we already own the land. So then the bank funded all the development going up. So we have a good history with the bank. I mean, $4 million is probably a big one for your first development. If you don't have a history with a bank, you would definitely have to look at something smaller. And then always the other option is just to partner with somebody, partnering kind of with somebody who has experience in doing developing, even partnering with an excavator, giving them a piece of the deal, because that's a huge piece of the puzzle here, or a general contractor, somebody like that kind of puts the bank at ease as far as, hey, these people know what they're doing and they're not going to screw it all up.
Absolutely. That's good. I want to digress for a second then, because you mentioned it. So a lot of our listeners are physicians or, blue collar business owners. As they say, okay, Mike's doing 4 million. That's quite a bit. I'm going to start a little bit smaller, maybe do, $1 million, $500,000, whatever might feel comfortable for them. What aside from the zoning and the variances and those types of things, from a financing standpoint, what do investors need to be able to show, I guess, to walk into a bank and say, hey, I'm gonna try something different, and let's talk about getting financing for it?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely going to want a strong financial statement, and balance sheet would basically just says, a lot of assets that they show. So liquid assets are always going to be top tier. They want to see if you got liquid access, which would be like equities, cash, stuff like that. And then they want to see your overall net worth to make sure that, you got some skin basically in case you screw things up. And then you can always partner, like I said, and have somebody sponsor it to bring some of those assets. But basically you look at your net worth, you look at, how much cash flow you have coming in from your job, from other sources of investments, and how much liquid cash you have, and then you can kind of base it off of there. So if you don't have enough, you can partner and do something bigger, or you could do something smaller. You could even buy a lot in a subdivision and develop that lot and build a single family home just to cut your teeth, just to get used to calling contractors, just to learn the lingo and kind of see how it goes. And then, you could kind of go from there and keep growing up. So we had a lot of experience, just in the trades, and we knew a lot of people, which is why I was comfortable stepping into this level of it. But if you were doing your first one and you said, I don't want to do rehabs, I really want to focus on development, you could always just buy a lot in a subdivision and build a house. And that would be a very low risk, very, simple one to cut your teeth and get used to it and say, is this actually something that I want to do? Because basically what we're doing here is, a lot would be a 1/4 acre. We're doing 8 acres. So it's like we're doing 32 at one time out here. So if you do one, then you do 2, then you kind of get a feel and say, all right, I got some experience and I think I could do this.
Yeah, no, that's really good insight. And you partnered with a few folks to build this thing. Talk about partnerships and what that might look like for investors who, to your point, want to cut their teeth, but really don't have the time to learn the lingo, talk to contractors, or just don't have the money either, can't get the financing. And so a partnership for them to get this thing off the ground is going to be best for them. What give some advice there?
Yeah, so I'll give some advice. I'll tell you the story. So I had planned to do this one on my own, actually, initially. This is going to be kind of my big project that I did on my own. And then I had a bad accident in June of 21, and this was supposed to close in July. And at the time, I didn't know if I was going to walk again. I didn't know, it was very, very scary times. So basically, I was just going to walk away from this deal. And I was very excited about it because I knew it was a good purchase on the land. We had made a lot of headway with the town, so we knew we were going to get the annexation and the zoning. And it was just too much risk at the time because I was, working before a W-2 salary. That was going away. So it was just too much risk. So I called a partner that I've partnered with on other projects and basically said, hey, here's the game plan. Here's what I'm looking to do. I'm going to have to walk away because it's just too much risk for me in this current state of my life unless you want to partner. And he said, yeah, man, let's partner on it. So that is this personal story on this one. As far as partnering goes, he brings a lot to the table because he had, the funds to be able to give us security in closing this thing. And then he has a great relationship with the bank. So the bank trusts him just like, now they're growing to trust me. And then it's a win-win for both of us. So he doesn't want to be out here dealing with this stuff, but he wants to build that passive cash flow. So he puts some money to work and he's totally passive, doesn't have to worry about anything. And then for me, I'm trying to learn how to do all this stuff. And, we'll probably make, quite a bit of money. I mean, a good chunk of money we'll put in our pocket basically to learn, So most people pay money to go learn. They'll go to school, they'll go to a trade school, they'll go, do whatever. And they're putting money out of pocket to learn things in theory. Where out here, with this partnership, I get to be the guy working and out here and learning all this stuff, meeting with contractors. So I'm kind of cutting my teeth. And I'm learning hands-on. I'm not learning theory. So now, I've learned more in this last few years than I could ever learn out of books, and I'm going to make quite a bit of money for doing it. So it's been just a great partnership, and that's typically what I see a lot of these partnerships looking like: is somebody has the money, somebody has the time, and then you put those two together and go out and make something happen.
Yeah, very cool. It's like reverse tuition is what I think of. Like, instead of you paying to get an education, you're getting paid back, which is very unique and not common in the world of education, and especially when it's real world stuff like this. There's got to be a sense of pride a little bit. You had mentioned earlier that people are going to see a storage facility that's going to look really nice. It's not going to be gaudy. There's got to be a sense of pride that as people are using your facility to store their things, you're creating an impact on them. You're creating some peace of mind for them, knowing that they have a safe place to put their belongings. They trust you. That's got to feel pretty good on top of the, obviously the financial benefits that come with it. Yeah.
And the biggest thing for me is the reason I love being out here and doing it. I just love learning and, kind of learn something new and getting to that next level on, no matter what it is. But the biggest thing for me is I have 7 kids. Some of them are very book smart. Some of them want to be out here operating machines. Some of them, just want to watch TV all day. There's so many different drastic things. And most of what I do is sitting behind a computer, running numbers and doing that type of stuff. But, my son Grayson, who's out here right now, he hates sitting behind a computer. He wants to be out here, working and doing things. So I bring him out here and he gets to learn how to do this. He gets to meet with the contractors. They let him hop in the seat and drive around a little. So, as far as like sense of pride and stuff, that is really the biggest thing for me. I just love, bringing him out here because he absolutely loves this stuff. And there's not much opportunity for me besides, this to be able to get him, in the seat of a bulldozer pushing some dirt, and kind of live that little childhood dream. And who knows where it'll take him, whether he wants to develop or, be an operator or, whether he goes to college. But I just like exposing the kids to as much as I can so they have a ton of life experience. So rather than turn 18 and say, hey, what do you want to do? And they don't have any experience. I'd just like them to get as much experience as possible so they can decide, hey, I actually do enjoy doing this, or I actually don't. I thought I would, and I don't like doing it.
Hey, D&D podcast family. I want to take a quick break in this episode to share a little behind the scenes of why the Doctors and Dollars podcast and our Wealth Wednesday series were made and why they're important. We have a number of physicians in our Grand Vision family office, and through conversations with them, we realize there is a huge void in financial education for physicians. We don't have time to personally work with every doctor out there, so the podcast is a way for us to offer a resource where you can learn about physician-focused wealth strategies via Wealth Wednesday, while also learning from other doctors making a splash in the medical community via Doctors and Dollars. Providing value is our top priority, and if there's a specific question or topic that you want to hear about, just reach out to us on any social media platform or go to the Doctors and Dollars website, which is ddpod.com. Also, if you'd like to take your wealth plan to the next level and be a part of a community of money-minded physicians in our family office, we open applications just twice per year. You can explore and get more details about the next application period at grandvision.co. Now, back to the show. Do you think this is something, if someone were to put themselves in your shoes, but they said, hey, I can't be hands-on, I can't be out there, walking around in the dirt, talking to contractors, things like that. Do you think that a project like this could still get done, I guess, from the sidelines is maybe how I want to say it? Go out and watch a YouTube video that says, here's the 10 steps how to build a storage facility. and then somebody could get it done, or does it really take that hands-on exposure like you're getting, and then also your son Grayson is getting?
Yeah, no, 100%. You could do it without being here. You could hire a general contractor who's done this in the past, and you wouldn't have any issues, and they would do it. You'd spend a little bit more money because you're going to pay that general contractor for their experience and their time to manage it so that you don't have to. But you definitely could pay a general contractor to take care of this, and it would probably go smoother. I like being out here because I like learning. I like seeing, how this all goes. So rather than pay a general contractor because I don't have the time, I actually like I said, I don't mind saving the money, but I actually like being out here and learning it. And then I'm making money to learn. And same with, my son being out here, same thing. So I do it by choice. It definitely does not have to be done. So on this $4 million project, a few $100,000, you could hire a general contractor that has experience in developing, and they could run with the entire, development for you. And you could drive by once in a while and take a peek. Really, for my partner, he's basically doing that. He put up some of the cash for it, and he never comes out here, worries about it. I take care of all of that. So you could just hire a general contractor to replace, myself if you want to do it hands off.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and one of the reasons I know we were talking offline that you and Grayson are out there is the erosion over there. You had that culvert that needed to be fixed. Talk about that little hiccup that someone who's doing some developing might run into in the future, and you can kind of give them some hindsight on what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, that's the thing with this lot. This was 8 acres that sat here forever. Nobody cared about it. But as soon as you start developing, all of a sudden everybody cares about what culverts, give off water where and what kind of erosion it's creating. So that responsibility falls on us to make sure that we resolve that problem, and that we're not creating a mess for this neighborhood over here, that we can hold enough water and so on. So this pipe back there where we have all that riprap, which is that big rock back there, that's basically to stabilize that hill, and that culvert goes under the railroad and takes water from the other side of the railroad and passes through to our site. But it had not been maintained forever. So it was all dammed up and, basically kind of clogged and just backing up water and creating a mess. So that's something that we didn't necessarily see when we bought this property. We didn't realize we would have to do that. But then you start building and everything gets done and gets to grade. And then you see, oh man, we got a big problem here because that property is blocking off this water flow and it can't get through to ours. So you got to, come up with a plan B and figure it out. But yeah, for sure, the erosion control and the environmental stuff has been a huge, huge learning curve, because I've dealt with contractors many times. But this type of stuff is something different. The environmental and the sediment, it's just a whole new industry. So as painful as the learning has been, it has been a ton of learning. Yeah, a ton of learning. Probably be a whole college education just on this one development site of erosion control, sediment, how to do it, why it's a problem, all that stuff.
For sure. Once this meeting goes through tomorrow, what's timeline look like for completion for you?
I'm hoping by the end of the summer. So concrete will get out here, they'll stone, and then they'll get concrete going. Concrete has to cure. And then we'll start working on that. But the buildings will go up pretty quick once the concrete's down and cured. And then some of the delays now will be some of the electrical equipment, HVAC equipment is about 130 days out from time of order to actually delivery. So those are some of the delays that were somewhat unexpected as well. But, we're making progress. So you figure about 4 months for some of that final equipment. So we're probably looking at fall time, before we finally get finished.
Man, I can't imagine I don't want to say the word stress. That's not the right word, but like the anticipation of buying this place in July of 2021 to getting to today, right? Spring of 2024. There's a lot that went on in there, but also it probably feels like not a lot went on, because it essentially went from a grass field to a dirt field. And now you're quickly going to go from a dirt field to a fully completed property within, call it 4 to 6 months.
Yeah. There's no doubt stress is definitely the word.
Okay.
It has been very stressful. It just is though, when you're doing something brand new, it's going to be a lot of unexpected obstacles. You just don't even know what to expect. So it has definitely been stressful. But like I said, I've just learned an absolute ton by doing it. And you see some of the shortcomings, so we're going to be buying some equipment. Grayson kind of wants to start getting used to using some of this equipment, but you see some of these contractors, for example, the erosion control, the contractors that you hire, there's a major disconnect between the inspector, who's the environmental people, and the civil engineers when they come out and inspect, and then the work that the erosion control companies do. There's definitely a disconnect of what the engineers want done and the work that is actually completed. So we're learning a lot of that, kind of being stuck in the middle there. So we're going to buy some equipment and so on too. And Grayson kind of wants to start getting into the erosion control game. So we'll probably start small and run a little business, and use some of that equipment and take this knowledge that we learned and start to turn it into solving a problem for other contractors and build a little business off of that.
That's very cool. You've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. So to take a problem, I mean, that's the most successful businesses are the ones that solve problems for people. So good insight there to see, okay, this is a gap, and we're experiencing that pain. We can't be the only ones that are experiencing that, and let's solve it. Yeah. And you can make some money that way.
For sure. And that's the thing about being out here. I have the time, so I just enjoy doing this stuff. And you learn those problems where if you had a general contractor in the middle, that's his job to solve those problems, so you never have to deal with it. So you wouldn't really identify those problems. To you, everything runs smoothly on the sites and everything works. But for us being out here, we're definitely able to identify. That's probably the number one problem that we identified so far, just because that's been the biggest headache for us. And I'm sure there'll be other ones, that we identify just by being out here. But yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody we talk to has the same problem, but there's a disconnect because nobody knows about it. So, we'll see how it goes. And, but I think solving that problem for other developers and contractors, I think would be very successful.
For sure. So you've talked a lot about learning today. How are you going to take this learning? You've actually learned a lot while getting paid to do it, and will make a pretty good profit. What do you see next steps? How are you going to take this learning that you're gathering over these last couple of years and apply it in the future? Is this something that Grand Vision Capital is going to do? Is this going to be a separate business? Is this going to be more personal? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so everything that we do, at Grand Vision Capital right now, we do multifamily because that's where all my experience comes from with my own money previously. So I never like to do anything, as part of Grand Vision Capital until I know that I'm 100% confident. I know what I'm doing. I know how the processes work. I've learned all the obstacles. I've learned the mistakes. So we've done that with multifamily. That's what we stick to. But just like we talked about at the last storage facility, we bought it for whatever it was, mid 400s, a super safe investment because the value is there, and we're learning all of the headaches that come with rehabbing a storage facility, getting it back up and running. This is basically that same plan. So we're out here developing. We're doing a decent sized project, but basically just running an entire test on developing, and then we'll decide and see, okay, this is actually how long it takes, and this is how much money it costs, and this is the value in the end. You reduce some of the headaches because it's all brand new utilities, but you add headaches because you have to install the utilities. So basically doing this is all just a test run before we kind of take it to the next level. So once we go to Grand Vision Capital, we can't be doing, smaller projects that are only 8 acres. We got to be placing a lot of money and doing big projects. So this is basically a test run on development to see, is this something we want to invest in the future, doing development projects? Is the reward worth the risk in doing it? And, basically that's why I'm out here learning all this stuff so we can make good educated decisions on, hey, once we add storage to the mix, is it better to develop? Is it better to buy and rehab? And then same even with multifamily. We have a good idea. We do a ton of buy and rehab, but now we'll know in general, doing some development, does it make more sense to keep buying and rehabbing, or is it better that we just start buying some land and building apartment complexes versus our current structure? Because we don't have the data right now on storage as a whole, and we don't have the data comparing renovating versus development to see what purpose does this serve in the overall investment strategy, and how does this fit? So that's kind of what we're doing. We're always looking to make the best investment strategies with cash flow, with maximizing returns, and basically that's what we do. I kind of test it first with my own money and partnering outside, and then once we get it dialed in and we know all the variables, then we make a decision on how we want to proceed with Grand Vision.
Awesome. That is a perfect segue into my last question, which is around the risk and rewards. As someone who may be watching this as a potential investor, as they're thinking about the reward, what does cash flow typically look like from an existing property? And we may have talked about this on the last episode. I don't remember, but what can someone expect from a cash flow on an existing property that's just been rehabbed versus, kind of like the project that you're doing right now? What are some of those returns? What's that cash flow look like on maybe a new development?
Yeah, so on a rehab one, the cash flow, you're kind of buying the cash flow, or at least buying what you can quickly get the cash flow to. Cash flow on our existing
Great
is going to
answer.
be maybe
Yep.
6 months away, so it's very cash flow heavy. Most people, when they develop, they're developing to basically flip it. So they're going to do the entitlement, which is taking that raw land and getting it zoned properly. And then once it's zoned properly, most people will sell it at that point to a developer then, because the developer didn't deal with the zoning and stuff. They cut a year off of their timeline, and they're buying it ready to dig. Some people will do the entitlements and then dig themselves. But then the next stage is most people would come out here and they would develop this property, and then they would sell it to a storage operator. Most people are not doing the development as the storage operator. They're just developers. They don't want to run the business. We're just different because we do storage, and I want to see if this is a better way. So to give you some idea on numbers, cash flow, typically we're going to be looking on a storage facility, like we're shooting for an 8 to 10 cap. Which would mean that if we paid all cash, the property is going to return 8 to 10% to us via cash flow. We use loans, so you have return on your cash and different variables. But in general, we're using that cap rate to say if we paid cash for this, not leveraging it, we'd expect to get about 8 to 10% back, and then hopefully we remodel it, rehab it, and get it cash flowing even better than that. On the development side, like I said, most people are not looking to be the storage operator. They're just looking to develop. But for numbers on that, we paid about $120 for this, $125 maybe. We put in probably $60,000 to engineers and attorneys to get all the zoning stuff. But once we got through the zoning and we had final approval that we could start digging here, the value of the property, we had it appraised, went from that roughly 125, and we put 45-ish into it. So say we're into it for 170, the value came back at 1.1 million. So we basically increased the value by $1 million. And that's why most people would sell at that point then, because they did $170,000 worth of work. And really, you're hiring engineers and attorneys. It's not like there's really much that you have to do. And you increase the value $1 million. So now we're breaking ground, and this whole project will cost us about $4 million, but the appraisal on the finished product is $6 million. So basically taking it from raw land to ready to dig on this property, 8 acres, was $1 million in creation. And then building the entire property out to be ready for storage to come in here added another $1 million. So now we're in it for $4 million, but it's worth $6 million. So each step of the way has been $1 million. And then we're going to be the end user as a storage operator. So then that's when that will flip to more of a cash flow perspective. So then we're looking at that same thing. We're looking at this thing should cash flow about 8 to 10%. We'll get a loan on it. And then, our return on our actual cash investment will be hopefully higher than that, but that's basically how it'll all shake out.
Gotcha.
Trust me, I've been very tempted to sell this thing and not take it all the way to cash flow to operate a storage facility, but there's just like I said, there's just so many learning opportunities across there. And it's not like you lose that money. It's just sitting in equity rather than cash by selling it. So I think walking away from that big payday, I think will pay dividends down the road by gaining this knowledge, because the next property will probably be bigger than 8 acres. Or I could just start developing properties and cashing them out like most people do, rather than taking them all the way to the end. So I think there's been a ton of knowledge here that it sounds crazy, but those $1 million jumps, I think leaving those as equity and not cashing them in will pay dividends to many more millions down the road because of that knowledge gained.
I could hear or understand somebody hearing that and saying, okay, $170,000 in, develop the land, deal with some contractors, and all of a sudden it's worth $1 million, turn around and sell it. I mean, that's a good business right there. Now I get why developers are doing that kind of thing.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
I'm always a long-term thinker like you are. So I totally get it's $1 million, could be $1 million today, could be $2 million by the end of this thing. But man, the cash flow, I mean, I got to imagine you guys will cash out, refinance. You're going to get a lot of that cash back anyway. That's going to be a big payday for you. But just the long-term cash flow over the next 30 years is going to be incredible. And then eventually there's going to be some young kid who's, 10 years old right now, but eventually he's going to start flipping storage facilities, and he's going to approach Mike Neubauer and say, hey, I want to buy your existing property and rehab it. And you'll be able to do it then.
Yeah. I mean, telling try sitting around a dinner table and telling your wife that you could sell it and make $1 million, but you don't want to. You're going to hold it and deal with all these headaches. So I'm out here today throwing rocks around, and she's like, "You could sell this thing and make $1 million." I'm like, "This is better. I enjoy this." It definitely doesn't make sense. But I mean, I bought a lot of property during the crash, a lot of single family houses, and we sold. I mean, we've probably flipped 200 some houses. And I mean, there's millions of dollars of equity that we walked away from. And every time I drive by one of those houses now, I think, man, I should have kept that thing. It's worth so much more today. I wish I would have held on to it. So I've just had that. I've had that realization too many times in the single family world to realize that those numbers seem exciting and cashing them out would sure be nice. But if you're in a position that you don't necessarily need that cash, the long-term game always pays much more than the short-term gain.
Yeah. So that's my final thought. It really is, and maybe it's a final thought and a question. If you are an investor who is thinking about getting into the real estate world, you like I don't want to say the lesser risk of a storage facility and the more consistency with a storage facility, but don't want to go out and do the learning, that Mike and Grayson are doing. Don't want to take away time from all the other things you have going on in your life, and you want to be a passive investor. Talk about how people might be able to do that with Grand Vision.
Yeah, so I mean, we obviously do the multifamilies now. We'll be bringing this stuff in-house as we learn and get these projects taken care of. But yeah, it's basically what we do. Like I said, people need, in an investment, you need money and you need time. So if you have the money, then you got to find somebody that has the time. You could either hire that out, like I said, hire a general contractor. The only thing is you have to have some knowledge, because when that general contractor calls and has a question and says, "Hey, what do you want to do here?" You got to know how to answer that. And if you don't know those answers and you don't have the time to be out here to learn it, it's just you're basically paying for those mistakes. It's going to cost you money. But that is definitely one option, is to hire professionals and pay them to kind of run the show for you. Or the other option is, like my buddy did, investing with me. He put the money up and said, "Hey, go and do this." That's basically what we do with Grand Vision. And, we partner with people that have the money. We go out here. I mean, at Grand Vision, I'm out here doing the storage facility, but at Grand Vision, we have a whole team of people. We got maintenance people at the sites. We got property management. We got, investment people. We have a director of operations. So that's basically what you do with Grand Vision is invest your money with us. We go and deploy it, and we run our team to make sure your money's working well. So that's kind of the most passive way, is to find those types of investments where you just place your money and they go and do the work for you.
Awesome. Well, Mike, always a pleasure. I'll let you get back to enjoying that sunshine, always learning, giving some life experiences to your son.
All right, man.